If the polls are to be believed,
Do solemnly swear.
one of these two men will again take the oath of office, but in the lead-up, Americans are grimacing at the fact this is the best each party could bring forth.
This Biden-Trump fatigue is very real, and it's only going to get worse as the year goes on.
But it's this blast from the past that voters are wishing had stayed out of sight, saying it highlights how neither party speaks to a majority of the country.
It goes without saying, plenty of Americans do not want either of these men to be president, let alone be their party's respective nominee or even in the running to be a candidate, as comedian George Carlin explains.
Let me say one thing about choice. There is no real choice. They say freedom of choice. You're given an illusion of choice. Americans are meant to feel free by the exercise of meaningless choices. You don't have, you know what the choices are in this country? Paper or plastic, a pile or window, smoking or non-smoking. Those are your real choices.
And, as he put in previous specials, the idea of choice to Americans is all an illusion.
So if somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go f*** yourself. Go f*** yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob.
Speaking of Elon Musk.
Suppose a white racist from South Africa becomes an American citizen. Couldn't he call himself an African American? If for no other reason than just to bother black people. And what about a black person born in South Africa who becomes an American citizen? Is he an African American or is he a South African American? Or is he simply a South African American African American? You know, it's just so much more tedious liberal labeling.
Carlin rips many as he spoke at the National Press Club.
We did the largest tax cuts in history.
In unearthed video, Donald Trump in Palm Beach, Florida, is seen giving a speech to potential donors, which unjustifiably speaks to how our politicians do not serve our own interests, but rather theirs, the ultra-wealthy.
All it is now is the search for dollars and the search for the things that dollars buy, and there's very little of a core humanity left. It happens, it works on the individual level and on the small scale. On the large scale, it's all a human comedy, it's all a joke, and I try to treat it as that. I see this culture as circling the drain in ever faster and tighter circles, and I just observe it and enjoy observing. I root for that demise of this culture. I root for the demise of this species. It just happens to be my hobby to kind of root for all this stuff to go away and give another species a chance, perhaps. I root for the big comet. I root for the big asteroid. I honestly do. And I did that before those movies came out. I honestly do. I think we've had a turn. Let someone else have it.
Figure this out, Madam Speaker. We have a very, very urban Senator, Barack Obama.
Well, first of all, what is very, very urban? Why don't you just go ahead and say black? He has played with racial language before, and this is no different. He is an embarrassment to the people of Iowa and to the U.S. Congress.
Speaking of this word that should have caught your attention, Carlin has a take.
And while we're at it, when did the word urban become synonymous with the word black? Did I sleep through this, perhaps? Urban styles, urban trends, urban music. I was not consulted on this at all again. Didn't get an email, didn't get a fax, didn't get a postcard. That's fine. Let them go.
Okay, thank you very much for being here as we commemorate the return of historic Native American artifacts and sacred remains to American soil. That's a big thing. They've been working on this for a long time, long time, many, many years. As my administration did last year, an increase in Native American access to eagle feathers. My administration is fighting for Native American communities. We made the largest investment in Indian country in the history of our country. We have $8 billion in CARES Act funds to protect Native American health. $8 billion, that's the largest amount of money ever spent on the Indian reservations. I created task forces on missing and murdered American Indians and protecting Native American children.
In addition, Carlin objects to the term Native American being used, and here is why.
And I simply can't justify this awkward phrase, Native Americans. First of all, they're not natives. They came here from Asia over the Bering Land Bridge. In fact, there are no natives anywhere in the world. Everyone is from somewhere else. All people are refugees, immigrants, or aliens. If there are natives anywhere, it would have to be people still living in the Great Rift Valley in Africa. So everyone is just visiting. So much for native. As far as calling them Americans is concerned, well, how can I say this? We steal their hemisphere, destroy 500 cultures, kill 20 million, stick the rest of them on the worst land we can find, and then as a special bonus, we name them after ourselves. It's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing.
My amendment has nothing to do with whether or not colored people or black people or anybody can serve, okay? It has nothing to do with color,
Mr.
your
Speaker.
skin, any of that stuff.
Republican Eli Crane showed you who he was on the House floor.
So I would like to tell you how I handle some of these speech issues concerning minorities. First of all, I say black. I say black because most black people prefer black. I don't say people of color because it's dishonest. It means precisely the same thing as colored people, which is an insult. So if you're not willing to say colored people, you shouldn't be willing to say people of color. And besides, to me, the whole idea of color seems a bit specious, really. I mean, what should we call white people? People of no color? Isn't pink a color? And in fact, white people are not really white at all. They're different shades of pink and olive and beige. In other words, they're colored. People of color is an awkward phrase that obscures meaning rather than enhancing it. What shall we call fat people? People of size?
While Carlin rightfully goes after the Cranes of the world for their narrow-minded stupidity.
In 2021, the U.S. military budget crossed the $800 billion mark. That's more than the next 9 largest militaries combined. So it's no surprise that America, with all that money to spend, has the most expensive war machines on the planet.
Oh yeah, and speaking of not looking out for the people that put them in office, the military-industrial complex is the ultimate BS.
Where the military is concerned, the extent of a politician's insincerity can be measured by how far around the world our soldiers are stationed and whether or not any of them can pronounce it. Incidentally, another way of expressing this sentiment is to say we're sending our young men and women to places the average American can't find on a map. I've always thought it was kind of funny and somewhat out of character for a politician to go out of his way to point out the low level of American intelligence when indeed his very job depends upon it.
Lastly, we end with a poem from Carlin. Have a listen.
I'm a man for the millennium, digital and smoke-free. I've been inputted, outsourced, uplinked, and downloaded. I have software on my hard drive, and I can give you a gigabyte in a nanosecond. I'm factory-authorized, returnable, fully equipped, built to last, and I'm definitely biodegradable. My output is down, but my income is up. I'm tanned, rested, and market-tested, user-friendly, and lactose-intolerant. A diversified, multicultural, postmodern deconstructionist. I'm a cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, high-concept rageaholic, and I have a love child who sends me hate mail. I'm an alpha male on beta blockers, a bottom feeder and a top gun, a Bigfoot rainmaker. I give soft money with hard cash, and my revenue stream has a cash flow of its own. I'm ahead of the curve, riding the wave and pushing the envelope. I'm on board, on point, on message, but off drugs. I take power naps. I take victory laps. I've got a personal trainer, a personal shopper, and a personal agenda. I'm a totally ongoing slam dunk no-brainer with an outreach that's proactive. I eat junk food, I get junk mail, I buy junk bonds, I watch trash sports. I've been dumbed down with smart bombs. I'm in denial, I'm in recovery, but I'm out of the loop. I'm also on the bubble. A high-tech lowlife, anatomically, ecologically, and politically incorrect. An entry-level man with no exit strategy. Low rent but high maintenance, upscale but down home. I got a minivan with a microwave from a mega store in the mini mall. I've been to outer space. I've been to outer space on the internet. I'm a non-believer and an overachiever, emotionally deprived and market-oriented. I have hardcore software because I use the F word in my email. I'm new wave from the old school, and if I'm not at ground zero, you can reach me at square one. I'm gender-specific, voice-activated, capital-intensive, heat-seeking, faith-based, and work-related, but I'm definitely not group-oriented. I'm online, I'm in line, but most of the time I'm out of line. I'm cocked, locked, and ready to rock, rough, tough, and hard to bluff. I put the pedal to the metal, party hardy, and to me, lunchtime is crunch time. Thank you.
Hey everyone, If there are any stories that you want to bring to our attention, whether it is the local level, collegiate level, professional level, national level, that you think would be worthy of a story and us covering, there are so many hours in a day and only so much we see. Submit them to me. Get at me on Twitter, on Instagram, and TikTok. Send me a DM, send me a tweet, what have you. We appreciate it. Hope you have a great day.
The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
On Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, who attacks DEI, and much more, like...
While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder.
He would also attack women's rights behind the shield of religion.
I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I have a wife who leans into her vocation. The girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
He applauds women only for staying in the kitchen.
I am certain the reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him. Reading that article now shared all over the world, we see that in the complete surrender of self and a turning towards Christ, you will find happiness.
He would attack Pride Month.
To the gentleman here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better.
He plays up the unfounded right-wing mantra of men can't be men anymore.
As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well.
And willfully washes his hands clean when it comes to violence because of absentee fathers. Instead of really thinking about this before saying such utter stupidity, how about previously in a piece we did, when he was asked about what happened at the Chiefs' Super Bowl parade where there was a shooting, he also blamed it on absentee fathers. You know what he didn't blame it on? The guns and responsible gun ownership. He didn't blame it on how this country enables lax, loose gun laws for anyone and their mothers, if they are psychotic, to be able to obtain a firearm. It wasn't about that. It was absentee fathers. You know what else he didn't touch on when he was giving this godforsaken speech? Was this. There are a lot of problems in this country. One of them is your religion. Let's unpack that for a second, shall we, Harrison? Instead of going after the absentee fathers route, maybe go after the priests who have seen a pattern within your subset of religion for traumatizing young kids. But no, let's play up the culture wars because it's easy for a narrow-minded, thin-skinned ghoul like Harrison Butker. It really is.
You're talking about fatherlessness and that there's this epidemic in the Black community of fatherlessness. And excuse me if I've missed it, but to date, what have you done to combat fatherlessness in the Black community?
Okay, so you're accepting that we have an issue with fatherlessness in the Black community. You're accepting that, I assume.
Actually, don't. But
I'm not. You said that.
I didn't think so. So you're not accepting it, and you're asking me, what am I doing about something that you don't accept?
No, you're my question is clear as day.
He probably drew inspiration here. Anyway, I thought this was revealing.
I don't talk to Harrison all year long, man. I just let him do his thing.
Don't talk to him. Go say hello. It's not like in the lunchroom. You say hi in the lunchroom?
No, we sit right beside each other in team meeting, and I don't say one word to him, only before the season and after the season.
Additionally, part of the reaction went like this.
Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it.
Didn't you hook up with that male cheerleader at Georgia Tech in college?
Quite an accusation from Sarah Bader on TikTok. There would be more, because someone in attendance would speak on it.
Some of us did boo. Me and my roommate definitely did. There was a standing ovation from everyone in the room, except from me, my roommate, and about 10 to 15 other women. You also have to keep in mind this was at a Catholic and conservative college. So a lot of the men were like, yeah, they were excited, but it was horrible. Most of the women were looking back and forth at each other like, what the is going on? Like, did he just come here to speak about politics and his views on women? That's all you got for a graduation commencement speech? Are you kidding? But yeah, it was horrible. I graduated with a bachelor's in graphic design, and I will be working for a nationwide magazine company, doing layout and photography. So yeah, I'm excited for what my career brings me, and no, I'm not a homemaker. Also, I'm 21, question mark. Getting married and having kids is not my ideal situation right now. So yeah, it was definitely horrible, and it definitely made graduation feel a little less special, knowing I had to sit through that and get told I'm nothing but a homemaker.
Now, why did I say that Harrison Butker's mother might disagree with this? Well, she actually went to Smith College, which is a college for women that's known to create some of the best leaders and innovators in our society, including his mother, who is a physicist at Emory University, where she works in the oncology unit. And so I'm super curious what things like that his mother might think, but that other women sitting in the audience, or anyone sitting in that audience getting their degree, know that that moment is a huge celebration for you. And someone tried to take it away, but listen to all of those that are saying, like, this message is so absolutely batshit that it's important to know that what you're doing is important. And there is no qualification that means that you have to sacrifice those things that you're excited about in your career just because an NFL kicker told you so.
Ashley Hurd also weighed in. Writer Jessica Valenti saw all of this and put her thoughts into words on her Substack. And we will leave a link in the description box below so you can read it. But here's a part of it. After 4 years of late-night studying, student loans, and dreaming of what their life would look like, to be told on your graduation day that it was all a waste of time. Think about how degrading that must have felt. On a day meant to celebrate their successes, these young women had to sit through a man telling them that their college careers weren't just pointless, but diabolical and not God's will. Yes, because God was the one who said, be thy neighbor, love thy neighbor, hate thy women, and throw thee back in the kitchen. Valenti continues, the truth is that I did not want to write about this man and his BS. The NFL players' remarks would be so much easier to dismiss if they weren't such a clear articulation of what conservatives want for American women. After all, Benedictine College is in Kansas, where conservatives just passed a slew of Handmaid's Tale-esque laws, including one that requires doctors to tell the state why a woman is getting an abortion. Not only are providers forced to ask women if they've been R-worded or abused, they must ask whether their patient wants an abortion because having a baby would, quote, interfere with the woman's education or, quote, interfere with the woman's employment or career. If a woman doesn't want to answer questions about her career versus motherhood priorities, the doctor must report that refusal to the state too, along with how many times she declined to answer. Harrison Butker's speech also comes at the same time that Republican attorneys general are fighting to ensure that employers don't have to give abortion patients time off. And as conservative senators are pushing legislation that would create a government-run website that collects pregnant women's data, we have to be really, really to the point here. She is laying out everything that Butker was saying and more, with how their vision of America is having women be akin to an ant. They could squash them at any time because they're men and they're powerful, because that's God's will. That's what Butker is doing here. So let's be clear about this commencement speech. Butker's remarks weren't fringe or radical. They're the law. He was simply saying out loud what Republicans have already codified, that women's role in this country is to bear children and support men, who are the actual stars of the show. In his speech, Butker told the male grads that men set the tone of the culture and that they should be unapologetic in your masculinity. There's a reason that evangelicals so often insist on calling themselves leaders, declaring that their power in the home and country is God-given. While the NFL took days to finally condemn Butker's commencement speech, Andrea Williams of the Tennessean wrote, speaking of quarterbacks, Butker just happens to play with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, you probably heard of him. And here's the thing, Mahomes is real good. He led the Chiefs on a ridiculous run. They've won 3 Super Bowls. Butker, of course, has been along for the ride. And he wouldn't have those Super Bowl rings without Patrick Mahomes. And without those rings, he doesn't have the aforementioned praise or platform. It would seem, then, that Butker would be more mindful of his words, particularly his reference to his quote, tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Or perhaps he doesn't know that as recently as a few decades ago, Patrick Mahomes' road to NFL franchise quarterback and Super Bowl MVP would have been far more difficult, if not impossible. Back then, football's decision makers believed that black men like Mahomes lacked the intellectual aptitude to play a quarterback and encouraged them to move to positions that were thought to rely on more physical dominance. Great piece. We'll link it in the description box below as well for Andrea Williams and the Tennessean. This is embarrassing. This entire speech was ridiculously embarrassing, and it hit every single culture war that Republicans love to play up. Cancel culture, the ills of DEI, eroding women's rights. There were parts that were anti-Semitic, and much more. Harrison Butker should be ashamed of himself. The NFL should be ashamed that they took days to come out and condemn this, and I'm curious to see what his team does, because there are many women who are executives and have higher up roles within this organization. And I'm curious to see how they feel about this. This was awful. And Benedictine College, which at one point made an out, as in gay, basketball player take down pride insignia, should be ashamed of themselves. Sadly, I do reckon that for as many takedowns as Butker is seeing today, Benedictine College's endowment and enrollment is going to go up, but not with women.